this is Pokalai Nui, and you are listening to Hawaiian Potpourri. Today is the 21st day of July in the year 2012. Welcome to the program. The first thing that comes to my attention is with regards to the Hawaiian Royal Commission. There's an article in the paper, this morning's paper, talking about what happened yesterday in the culmination, I think it was yesterday, yes, I believe so, it was yesterday, in regards to the report that comes out of the Hawaiian Royal Commission that they have completed their work and they are now taking a listing of people who want to inscribe their names into the formation of essentially a nation within a nation approach to Hawaiian sovereignty. The article itself is written by Rosemarie Bernardo, and it appears in this morning's Star Advertiser. I'm going to read portions of it and then make my own commentaries and why I believe that it is not appropriate, then reading from my my website and my opinions expressed on that website. It begins by saying, Kana'i Olovalu, a campaign of the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission to create a registry of Native Hawaiians who will be eligible to participate in the development of a governing entity kicked off Friday with a ceremony at Washington Place. More than 100 people attended the launch. Attendees included lawmakers, Office of Hawaiian Affairs trustees, and members of the Royal Order of Kamehameha I and Ahahui Ka'ahumanu. Enrollment began Friday and will remain open until July 19th. A petition is also available for non-Hawaiians who want to support self-governance for Hawaiians. Print and television ads are expected to begin soon to inform the public of locations where registration forms will be available. The Commission's goal is to register 200,000 Native Hawaiians in the state and abroad. There is no blood quantum requirement. Registration can be done online at kanai'oluvalu.org. The self-governance petition open to non-Hawaiians is also available on the website. Former Governor John Waihe'e, Chairman of the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission, spoke at the ceremony where he honored Queen Liliuokalani. And he is quoted, let me turn to the continuing page. He says, "This is the home of Queen Liliuokalani, and it was due to her action and our kupuna's steadfast refusal to yield the sovereignty of the Hawaiian people that we today can refer to ourselves as their beneficiaries," said Waihe'e. He called on non-Hawaiians for their support. "We need your help. We cannot do this alone," Waihe'e said. "This task was given to you as well as to us, because without your support, there is no way that we can see self-governance return to the Hawaiian people." I would suggest that right in there is what I call a non sequitur. Is that correct? It just doesn't connect. The logic does not connect there. But reading on, attendees stood and applauded as Waihe'e called for the community to unite to work toward the goal of self-recognition for Hawaiians. The message is simple, really simple, and it is this: for all of us who aloha Hawaii, now is a time to stand and being counted, unrelinquished, undeterred, united. Again, another non sequitur. Governor Neil Abercrombie choked up as he addressed the crowd. "Never from the day I was blessed to arrive on these shores of Hawaii did it occur to me that it would be my charge in life to be a catalyst in this transformation. I'm filled with resolve to do my best with every fiber of my being to be worthy of that charge," Abercrombie said. In July 2011, Abercrombie signed Act 195, which would work toward establishing a Hawaiian governing entity. The legislature also created the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission, comprised of members appointed by the governor to develop and oversee the process of enrolling Hawaiians in the registry. I think that's the primary areas that needed to be read to start the conversation off. I had been called and asked for my opinion from a reporter from the Honolulu Weekly, who was going to cover this story. I have not seen the story reported. And as she called, she had said that she had read a blog of mine on my website. My website is called Hawaiian Perspectives.org, and if you would like to go to it, you will see the following article that I read to you. I am very troubled about what this Native Hawaiian registry is about. I am troubled by those people who have sat on the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission and the kind of representations that are being made, especially by John Waihee, about calling this self-governance when it is nothing more than a policy, or how should I say it, a box created by the American government, the colonial government, in which to place the indigenous people as a way of overcoming their occupation, their colonization, their theft of Hawaii from Liliuokalani, and to invoke the name of Liliuokalani as the foundation for this movement, I think is contrary to what the history would reflect. And John should know better, along with Mahealani Kamau, if she stood in support of his remarks, and others who sat on this commission. They should all know better to attempt to claim that this is the direction being created because of Liliuokalani's protest against the theft of the Hawaiian nation. Let me go to an article that I had read, or I had written, when asked what do I feel about this Roll Commission. I say that the foundation of the claim for Hawaiian sovereign rights rests on two similar principles. One founded by the American Revolution, self-determination, and the second recalled by Kamehameha, and that is Pono. Given the circumstance of U.S. prevalence in Hawaii today, both principles complement each other. As a consequence of U.S. invasive military actions taken in 1893, resulting in a regime change overthrowing the legitimate constitutional monarch of Hawaii, Liliuokalani, and substituting in her place under a, quote, provisional government, the likes of Sanford Dole and Lauren Thurston, identified as the missionary boys, the application of principles of Pono and of self-determination calls for a resort to the voices of the people who have lost their rights as Hawaiian nationals to select independence from the U.S., free association with the U.S., or integration within the U.S. In the mid-1990s, a commitment was made by the state government and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs that we should turn to the voice of the Native Hawaiian people, asking them how to proceed to address the illegalities instigated by those activities a century earlier. Extensive consultations were carried out within Hawaiian communities throughout Hawaii and across America. After hearing those voices through the Native Hawaiian vote, a clear direction was given. Have the Hawaiian people elect representatives to meet in a council or convention to propose a form of Hawaiian governance to the Hawaiian people. Elections across Hawaii and the world were held. almost 90 native Hawaiians were elected and the convention was formed. It produced two tentative proposals: a Hawaiian nation within the United States of America, that's what is called the integration approach, and an independent Hawaiian nation state. The first would be limited to native Hawaiians. The second would be an inclusive nation state of all ancestries. The Native Hawaiian Convention, or what was called the AHO, the Aha Hawaii o Iwi, that's AHO, has not been able to complete its work. The state legislature and OHA refused to fund its work further, thus halting its final product and presentation to the Hawaiian people. Now the legislature and OHA have tossed to the Hawaiians the Native Hawaiian Role Commission, designed to integrate the Hawaiians as a nation within U.S. superior jurisdiction. This commission violates the dual principles of self-determination and Pono. It violates long-established principles of international law, of self-imposed mandates of the United States found in the UN Charter and its International Bill of Human Rights, as well as the recently approved UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The AHO has not adjourned sine die. It continues to be the only Native Hawaiian publicly elected body mandated to recommend to the Native Hawaiians the direction to be taken in the formation of a Hawaiian government. It is struggling to conclude its work, but the members of the convention are determined to carry out its mandate, slow as it may be, and recommend to our people the course to be taken in fulfilling E mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. Aloha aina, Pokalai Nui, Chairperson, the Aha Hawaii o Iwi. Okay, if you would like to comment on these matters, you can call us at 524-1080. We'll put you on the radio and give you an opportunity to express your voice. In the meantime, I will continue discussing this matter. This Hawaiian Role Commission is really an attempt to interfere with the work of the Aha Hawaii o Iwi. That organization, in attempting to come out with two proposals, develop two proposals and let the Hawaiian people decide whether or not they want to work within an Akaka model or an independent model, was feared by the state legislature, it is apparent, as well as by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, because they did not want the head of Hawaiian sovereignty to arise from the ash of colonization. They did not want the continuation of the dreaming of an independent Hawaiian nation to become the subject for both the Native Hawaiians and the non-Native Hawaiians, who also should qualify as nationals of this Hawaiian nation. So in order to squash that direction to be taken, the state legislature, along with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, have participated in standing in interrupting, in appointing other Native Hawaiians, led by John Waihe'e, to essentially act as what some people in some places would call the Uncle Toms, to step in and interfere with the full rolling out of the idea of self-determination. At the beginning of this song, we played that song, or at the beginning of this program, we played that song, Kana'i Aupuni. And Kana'i Aupuni is a song of Paea Kamehameha and his son, Kawike Aoli, both of whom incorporated in their sayings, E mau or ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. In Paea's death wish, as he was dying, one of his ali'i, John Young, asked him, "Oh, my commander, my ali'i, what do you leave back? What words do you want us to retain?" And Paia Kamehameha says, "E na'i vale no o ko, I ku'u pono a ole pau." Be undeterred in walking towards or seeking out the pono, because the pono that I have begun is not yet over. And you can find that same sentiment in Uamau ke eo o ka aina I ka pono, the life or the sovereignty, the processing of time in these lands. Uamau ke eo o ka aina I ka pono is through pono. It must be appropriate. It must be correct. It must be rightful as you move into the life of this land. The state entity has adopted the Hawaiian national motto as a state motto, but it continually fails to abide by the concept of pono. And as I said in the article, with regards to pono and with regards to self-determination, in our case they are essentially the same: the right of the people to express themselves fully in the full panorama of choices that they should be allowed to make the choice of independence from the United States or integration within the United States, but certainly not to be forced as it approaches here, where the Native Hawaiian Registry is forcing only that avenue to be taken. So anyway, they say that the goal is 200,000 Native Hawaiians by July 19. Of course, in the year 2012, and I can tell you now that they will fail by a large margin. They will not get the support of the Native Hawaiians. All right. Our telephone number is 524-1080. Let's go to our telephone line. Aloha, caller. Welcome to the program. Excuse me, caller. Just 1 minute.
Just
okay,
now
go ahead.
Said that they will fail by a large margin to achieve their goal of 200,000 signatures. I think you're right, and I would point out that the Kau Inoa program has lasted for more than 7 years, during which time they've only gotten 120,000 signatures
over those years,
despite giving away I don't know how many T-shirts and having lots of ads everywhere in all the TV and newspapers and all. So I think you're quite right that a year will not be sufficient to get even the 120 that they already had in the Kauai Noa program. I would like to ask you, though, I know you support the Akaka bill, but you oppose the Act 195 process.
That's correct.
And it seems to me that they are virtually identical from the standpoints that you have mentioned so far as being important elements.
That's correct.
The Native Hawaiian Convention, as you said, came up with two models of sovereignty, one of which was exactly what's being followed now with Act 195 and what would also be followed by the Akaka tribe. And in both cases, you have exclusively ethnic Hawaiians getting together, voting, electing representatives to write governing documents to present to their own group, and thereby to establish what they sort of like to call a government, and then they will use that government to negotiate with the state and federal government for land and money and whatever goodies they can get. And it just seems to me that both the Akaka bill and the Act 195 process are pretty much identical. So I don't understand why you support the Akaka bill when you oppose 195.
Okay. Let me respond to that. I think it's an excellent question. And the reason that I support the Akaka bill, which is federal legislation, is that the Akaka bill does not necessarily invoke an exclusiveness with regards to independence or full self-determination. What I'm saying is that oftentimes people have been pitching the Akaka bill as an either-or choice. If you support the Akaka bill, then you cannot support an independent Hawaiian nation.
But do you think
let
by
me finish.
supporting...
Excuse me, let me finish.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I've been saying is that it is not the case, and that is not what the Akaka bill says. It still reserves the right of the native Hawaiians or of the Hawaiian people to its internationally established rights, which is the right to self-determination. And if you read back into, for example, merely the definition of aggression adopted by the United Nations, where they say that any nation that aggresses against another one cannot, as a result, irrespective of the passage of time, find itself profiting from that aggression. So what I'm saying is that international law already protects the right to self-determination, and the Akaka bill makes reference to it and also contains enough principles in there or surrounding it that the Hawaiians from Hawaii can still say, no, we also want to go for independence and we have that right. Now, in this particular case, what is happening is that this is arising out of Hawaii itself, as if the voices of the native Hawaiians are calling for a government within a government, such as the Akaka bill, without at the same time also expressing and giving an opportunity for the native Hawaiians to express their support for an independent nation. So it's a pretense that this is an autochthonous movement by the native Hawaiians themselves, that we are supporting an integrationist approach. And when you have it that way, then you enter into that danger and you leave out the opportunity for independence itself. So they do look very similar, but I see it quite different. And I see it also as an interference by the state legislature. You know, the state legislature made a promise to the Hawaiian people that we will go out, we will listen to your voices, you want a convention, we will operate a convention and let the native Hawaiians choose what direction they want to go into. In this particular case, there is no such thing as a choice. There is no presentation of independence as an alternative. It is only an integrationist approach, and I am opposed to that approach. So that, I hope I've been able to explain that distinction to you.
Not really.
Okay.
Act 195 contains language asserting that Native Hawaiians are hereby recognized as the only indigenous people of Hawaii. And then Act 195 invokes explicitly the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which includes the right to self-determination and to choose, by inference, to choose independence.
Yeah, I don't think Act 195 did that. It did not invoke the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. But even if it does, I don't see how that would play any role in what we're talking about. Act 195 did two things. One, recognize the Native Hawaiians as the indigenous people of Hawaii, and two, set up the Royal Commission. And I think you're reading too much into Act 195.
I believe I saw that language explicitly in there.
Well, I may be corrected. If you can cite that language, then I would stand corrected, but I don't believe that it was in there. It may have been in the report or a reference to it. When I spoke to the legislature on it, I did talk about the right of self-determination, and that self-determination included the right of independence.
No, the concept of independence certainly was not explicitly mentioned in Act 195.
Yeah, but whenever you talk about self-determination, it already incorporates it. You cannot talk about self-determination without
but I do believe that it invoked the United United Nations Declaration in the Act.
Well, as I said, rather than going back and forth and saying you remember it, I don't remember it, if you have access to the Act, that would be the simplest way to resolve that.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things you were saying, and I remember you published an article on this topic in the Maui News and in the Oha newspaper a few years back, is that the Akaka bill does not say either or. It offers the opportunity for both and to make a choice. But can't the same thing be said about Act 195, Tribe?
No, the Act 195 is only approaching it in one direction, and that is to inscribe your name so that they can submit it to the feds, so that the feds could pick it up as the Akaka bill.
Well, that's exactly the process in the Akaka bill.
Yes, I know. That's correct. What I'm saying is that the Native Hawaiian Convention is proposing, or had been proposing, that we are going to provide both opportunities so that the Native Hawaiian people could choose the Akaka bill on one hand, they could choose independence on the other hand, or they can say we want to support the Akaka bill and we want to also move towards independence at the same time without giving in our international rights to self-determination. And that is not provided in what you find the state's Royal Commission.
Do you support the Akaka bill while recognizing that the Aha Hawaii Oiwi has been dormant for so long that it is not likely to be revived?
I don't come to the same conclusion as you do, that it is not likely to be revived. The Aha Hawaii Oiwi is the commandment of the Native Hawaiian people by a legitimate vote of all Native Hawaiians who wanted to participate, and there was no adjournment of that convention.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaii, Kupa ama hope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, Pala pala anunu me ka paka.